what you wanna be. Help me understand why I rap what I'm at. Wait, help me understand why you can't be what you wanna be. Help me understand where you are in the melody.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. Help me understand why I discuss short stories. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Shayaa. Today, I'll be doing a 3-word review on all the short stories I read throughout the week. I'll be choosing one of those short stories to talk about on Saturday. So make sure you read the short story I choose today. So on Saturday, you can join the conversation. Let's get right to it. James Baldwin, The Rock Pal, published in 1965. The Rock Pal is about the dangers of being free. You got a kid named Roy that isn't allowed to play at the dangerous, the most notorious rock pal that's near their home. Reason being is because kids fight and injure each other there, and his parents just ultimately doesn't want him to play at that rock pal. Now Roy says, middle fingers to y'all. I'm going to the rock pal. I want to play with my friends. Get a chance to see throughout the story how that affected him and how that affected his parents. Definitely will give it a read. My 3-word review for The Rock Pal is nostalgic temptations and quote unquote free. The reason why is because I remember being a kid and not being allowed to do certain things that were tempting. Also, said quote unquote free because you're never free. I go to work and I got a manager and I got to listen to my manager. And if I don't, I can be fired. And even when you own a business, you're not technically free. So I know as a child, we just so excited to be quote unquote free until you gotta pay bills. Next up, Octavia Butler's Blood Child, published in 1995. Blood Child is a sci-fi story that explores multiple themes such as coming of age, gender roles, and societal expectations. It's definitely a complicated story to understand. Well, let me not say definitely because I'm sure some people out here that could get through this story with the breeze. But for me, it was a difficult story to read, and it took me a while to actually understand what was happening in this story. Once I got past the first couple of pages, it got interesting and it was a little bit easier to digest. My 3-word review for Blood Child is pleasantly eerie. Wait. I said pleasantly eerie because this is a sci-fi and there's a couple graphic moments throughout the story that could possibly blind you of the real meaning, but there is a very deep meaning behind this story and it's a dense read. I was pleasantly surprised that she was able to seamlessly get through the different dynamics in this story with it not being a long story. She was able to accomplish what people can't even accomplish with a full book. Give it a read. She's an amazing writer. And watch some of her interviews. She's a powerful speaker. Next up, James Baldwin. This morning, this evening, so soon, another James Baldwin story. I think the underlining message in this story was there's disenfranchised people all over the world. You got a black American expatriate living in Paris during the late 1950s. He's married to a white Swedish woman whom he met in Paris. They also have a mulatto baby, heavy on a cream baby. My 3-word review for this story was previously a man. The reason why is because in the early and mid 1900s, black people in America were dehumanized and treated poorly and shitted on. And the list goes on. The story starts with the narrator and his family preparing to move to America from France. He'd been living in France for the last 12 years, not having to deal with the bad racial behavior in America, which is why my 3-word review is previously a man, because he was treated like a human. He was treated better in France, which will inevitably change when he moves to America. And lastly, Zora Neale Hurston, every tongue got to confess God's tale. Before I get into the book, I want to talk about Zora Neale Hurston a little bit. She was a black folk writer, anthropologist, and also a major proponent in mobilizing the Harlem Renaissance. She spent a great deal of her life bringing awareness to how unfair black people were treated in the early 1900s. Now, every tongue Got to Confess is an extensive volume of African American stories that Zora collected throughout her travels in the Gulf states. It's over 100 short stories, and every time Got to Confess broken down thematically. One theme could have 15 to 25 short stories, all less than a page long. So I'm doing my 3 word review a little bit different. My 3 word review will be based on the theme and not one particular short story. The theme that I'm gonna do my 3 word review on is God's Tales, which is a collection of very short stories justifying God's decisions. Now, my 3 word review is going to be playful, important questions. That's my 3 word review. Playful, important questions. I say playful because the topics are serious, but narrated in a humorous way. And important questions because no one has the answers, but everybody wants one. I'm sure there's not a human being on the earth that hasn't questioned a decision made by God. Every time someone, an unexpected death, we always say, why God? At least I do. And I don't feel like anything is wrong with that. Sometimes it's just involuntary. I think it's a part of just critically thinking about the universe. But overall, this was an interesting collection of short stories. Now it's time for the big decision. The story that I think I'm gonna choose for Saturday's discussion is Octavia Butler's story. It's a lot to unpack with this story, and it was well written. I want to take a shot at unpacking the sci-fi story. It was different, it was weird, and I really enjoyed it. So make sure you all tune in on Saturday. That's the story that I'll be discussing. Is Octavia Butler, Blood Child. Give it a read. And then on Saturday, you could, maybe write some comments and tell me what you all thought about it because I'm going to unpack a little bit more deeper than what I did today. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to my channel. I greatly appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm out. Oh, and also recommend me some short stories to read. I'll be more than happy to read a short story recommendation by any of the people that's tuning into the channel. Peace.
I had a time of life.